and welcome to the MotherRucker Podcast. My name is Lizanne and I'm here to chat to you about all things Sling every other week. With me today is Georgia Allen and Sheridan Thomas from My Midwives UK. They are registered independent midwives, professional midwifery advocates, and they've devised some groundbreaking initiatives too. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
You're so welcome. So, who's Sheridan? Who's Georgia?
So I'm Sheridan. And I'm Georgia.
Fantastic. And tell us a bit about yourselves. How did My Midwives UK come about?
So we worked in a caseloading model of care, and we were caseloading midwives for 2 years there.
Yeah, and we were buddies in that model, so very similar to how we work now, where Sheridan would have a caseload of women and I would be her buddy and meet them and come to the births with her, and we loved it.
Yeah,
we absolutely loved everything about caseloading.
Yeah, and unfortunately the funding behind the service was pulled, and the service didn't get the next contract. So actually we found out with very little notice that the service was actually closing. So we found out on the Monday that the service was going to close on that Wednesday.
Oh my word.
I know. Oh, and so we had a full caseload. We had women that were due to birth any day. They had the birthing pools. They were, they were 41 weeks.
Yeah.
We had a full caseload of women that were due. And we were absolutely devastated, weren't we? It completely pulled the rug from underneath us.
Yeah.
I think I cried for the first 24 hours.
Oh yeah, 48 hours notice. That's horrendous.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just awful. And the women were crying, the parents were so upset because we'd had, amazing continuity with these families. We'd looked after them from the beginning. We'd prepped them for the birth.
Sometimes it was a second baby as well and they'd come back to you. So it was just...
So we, so a lot, because it was such short notice, a lot of the local trusts were struggling to accommodate and get these people booked in as quickly as they needed care. So for a lot of people, the local trust were saying they couldn't facilitate the home births that they had planned. So we were like, oh my gosh, what can we do?
Yeah.
Is there any way we can carry on looking after our women? And the plan was just basically, get intrapartum insurance. We set My Midwives up really just
to cater for those women, so that we could still go and provide the home birth, do the care, thinking that it would just be kind of a short-term thing to support these women, and then we'd just go and find different jobs.
Yeah, we'd go back to the hospital and we'd work the way, that we did in the traditional model. Yeah. And then it just never really happened, did it? It's just never happened. So we just ended up, we cared for them, and then someone else would come to us and say, oh, you looked after my friend, please will you help me with my birth? And then here we are now. We're still carrying on with full caseloads. And we love being independent midwives, don't we?
Yeah.
Amazing. So how long have you been doing that? When did that happen that you...
So that was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we've been independent midwives for just over a year.
Over a year. And we just, the way that we tend to so independent midwives basically are just midwives who work in a self-employed capacity. So they work outside of the NHS. So at the point of which you qualify as a midwife, usually you just, most midwives go down sort of the traditional path where they take a job in the local hospital, and they're employed by the trust, and the trust then provides their insurance.
Whereas for us, we source that ourselves. So we have we go for the Royal College of Nursing and get our insurance from there, and we go through a different insurance provider where they provide you intrapartum insurance.
Yeah, so that's like your birth cover, and there's a lot of governance framework and regulations that we have to be obviously compliant with in order to practice in that way. So it's not an easy process, but it's definitely worth it for us. It just means that we practice, independently. We do work at our local hospital as well, like in the months that we're off call. So we very much, we know so many of the local heads of midwifery and, the local consultant midwives.
And things like that.
Yeah, so it just means that we get to, I think we're so lucky, we just get to work across like the entire spectrum. Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah. That's wicked.
I know. And we get 100% continuity with our, with our families. And it's just amazing because we do all of their appointments are at home.
Yeah.
They're in the
at home hypnobirthing, we do the parent education, the occipital positioning, and so they meet both of us, like we were saying, you've got your named midwife who goes with you from found out I'm pregnant all the way through to 6 weeks postnatal.
Yeah.
And then the buddy midwife will come and do like 10-12 hours of hypnobirthing. Yeah. They're there for the birth. So it's just,
they know us so well. Yeah. Honestly, by the end of it, I'm like, you might as well just get me a key. Yeah. Just let myself into the house. Yeah. And honestly, if you were to speak to any of our families, we literally just become like part of the furniture, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's we discharge people at 6 weeks postnatal. So because so much of the issues that occur during the postnatal period, for a lot of the time, it doesn't just happen in the first 10 days. And usually you discharge by day 10.
It's that 3-week bump with the breastfeeding. And then there's like, the habits are changing between 3 and 6 weeks where you wouldn't have anyone to turn to. But we're there.
Yeah, so we're still, still part of the family journey then, aren't we? And although, to be fair, we say we discharge them at 6 weeks, but
you never want to let people go.
They never really finish with us. Like, we're never done with them. They have us for life, really. And in some respects, we always keep in contact, don't we?
Send little updates and how we're doing, which we love.
Oh, that's so amazing. Oh, I wish things were different for me, but oh well. Anyway, we're not talking about me. So tell us a bit about your families. Are you single? Do you have partners? Do you have children?
Yeah, so I'm single. I live with my cousin. We have a good
Got
time.
me. We might as well, but honestly, we literally are like the same.
We spend so much time together, we might as well be.
Honestly, we really do. I've got a boyfriend and a dog. I've got a little dog called George, who is like,
he's our baby.
Yeah, he is. He's my midwife's first baby. Yeah. Which, to be fair, we're so busy. I'm so busy anyway that I don't know where. I literally would need to put my baby in a sling and just carry on. Just take my baby to all the births with me.
We always joke, because obviously we're self-employed, like there's no maternity leave, so as soon as they're out, get them in a sling and coming back on call.
This baby will be wrapped to my back, and that will be it.
Exactly. When I had my daughter, I was doing this by then. And you say there's no maternity leave when you're self-employed. They offered me £20 a week. I said, no, keep it. It's fine. I had 2 weeks off, C-section. I had 2 weeks off.
Oh, wow.
And then, I'd only had home visits from then. People came to me. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go anywhere. And I just had her in a sling the whole time. And then after 6 months, I put her in nursery. But otherwise, those first 6 months, she was in a sling. I had to keep working. I didn't have maternity leave with her. Thankfully, my job is Slings, so I didn't need to take a demo doll, so that was easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, the provision for self-employed maternity is absolutely
really
appalling,
lacking, isn't it?
Absolutely appalling. But okay. So you've mentioned Slings and carriers. Have either of you ever used one?
So we've demonstrated for our women, because a lot of the time, I think for some people, especially first time moms, sometimes they can be a little bit nervous about, especially the slings where there's just, because we tend to
lots of fabric.
Yeah. We tend to recommend just a sling that's fabric, because the way that we tend to think about it is that it's accessible to anybody. There are cultures where, people will use anything, literally a scarf, the baby gets wrapped in a sling, and that's it. They just crack on. And we don't want it to be something where it's an inaccessible concept to people, and
where they feel they have to get the one that's £50, £60. It's like, no, just
wrap your baby.
And we'll show you.
I get so many parents like inquiring, first time mums, new parents messaging me straight away. Oh, have you got the Ergo Baby Omni whatever that's this much money and does this? And I'm like, but do you want this one for 20 quid instead? Which is much better for the first few months, and then which is usually a stretchy wrap.
Stretchy wrap, basically.
Exactly. Do you want a stretchy? Have a stretchy. They're much nicer for you as well. But and then they're like, oh yeah, this is much better. You saved me money. And I'm like, oh cool. So you recommend stretchies to your families?
Well, we tend to just sort of recommend the way
fabric ones.
Fabric. We don't tend to sort of associate with any particular. I would never say I would never necessarily say that. Our side of it is very much just as long as it's affordable, as long as it's sort of fabric and it's soft, so that it sort of molds around the baby. And like I said, I'm very much of the mindset of, if you've got fabric, in your house, as long as it's long enough, big enough, and it's soft.
We do rebozo, which is like it's a Mexican traditional technique with a really big, long, firmly woven scarf. We've done that before, and we've got 3 that we can use with our women just to show them. So the ring sling, one that's just a long piece of fabric, and one that is a bit more structured, so they can kind of try them out and see which one they like. And then if they go and buy one from there, it's more just a look at one with good reviews. It doesn't need to cost the earth. You know, this was £18 from Amazon. If you want something like this, here's the link, rather than tie into brands more.
You
want to go and get an Ergo baby and that's what you prefer, amazing, you go and do that. But equally, this one cost a tenner. It's got really good reviews, people say it's lasted years, do you want to go for this one, kind of thing.
And it's always just bringing it back to that, you know, I think there's so much pressure on new families and new parents to constantly have the latest. And the things that, you know, they see. We're very much a consumer society, and actually it's getting back to the basics of why we're recommending the slings in the first place. And as I said, in other cultures, it would be, you know, in certain cultures, they'll use part of their actual dress themselves, you know, and actually in wrap. So I suppose we're always sort of trying to just drive home this, trying to get away from this idealistic idealistic view of getting the latest sling, and actually or with anything really. I suppose it's just trying to come back to actually your baby needs you, and all this is trying to do is facilitate that closeness as well. So it doesn't matter really from that respect to us, because actually what we want to do is just, you know, facilitate that close relationship, and that's all it is just a tool to do that. Oh
my God, I love you two so much. Oh, that was amazing. Because that's literally all it is. Like, as you know, this is what I say to a lot of my new parents in newborn consultations or newborn workshops, is I always say to them, like, your baby has just spent 9 months, usually 9 months, literally inside your body. They don't know anything different. The world is big and scary and loud and bright and cold, and they've got clothes on and they're pooing and weeing, which they've never done before. They're feeling hunger they've never before. This is all weird and scary. The only place they feel safe is here.
And when you explain it to new mums, when they go, oh, my baby doesn't want to be put down, what's wrong? It's like, because they've only ever known your heartbeat and warmth, and now we're putting them in there next to me and thinking, oh well, off you go. And then when you
that's what they do on TV.
And that's the concept, isn't it? It's a concept of this, like, what makes a good baby. And actually like parents have this and then they have, you know, sometimes it's other generations in the household that say, you don't pick your baby up, you'll spoil them,
you're making a rod for your own back.
That child will never sleep alone, you know, like
you're gonna carry them when they're 18.
At graduation they'll still be in a sling.
You're gonna breastfeed them at uni.
And it's really breaking down those sort of barriers, I think, and getting people to understand that this just in this societal pressure of these unrealistic expectations, you know, we're going against the physiology of a normal newborn infant,
and to be next to you and warm and close. And I love it with the dads as well, especially if mum's breastfeeding and they're feeling a bit out of kilter with it. It's like, well, when mum's asleep and that baby won't settle, get them in the sling, get your top off, get them on your chest, bonding, skin to skin. You can still do everything that you're doing normally, and they know they're safe and protected next to you.
And obviously you're building that secure attachment in them, aren't you? So it's so useful, obviously, and that's how we know then obviously children go on to sort of they prioritize their cognitive development, and we know that it helps with their behavioural and social skills. So actually it's something that's so simple and makes life easy for everyone in the household. Because I say to parents, trying to fight with a newborn baby it is just stressful, and you just will not win. Like, you know, everyone in the house, the baby's cortisol levels are through the roof and stress, your cortisol levels are through the roof and you're stressed. And actually it's such a simple fix, but it's just, I do believe it's a cultural thing though, because I do think when you see other cultures and it's so normal in their family, and their breastfeeding rates are higher, you know, and I just think that, you know, it's very much just a society thing that it's
something you probably know yourself. It's starting to see a bit more, but still I'm always shocked at how many people don't know about baby wearing or using a sling, and it's like the first time you ever mentioned it to them when you say it. But it is getting a bit better. More people are coming through and saying, oh, I've got a sling. Or
I think what I'm seeing more, I think people are very aware of the idea of like a structured baby,
like
to be out of the house. But then the concept of like, oh, but wear your baby in the house, like have your baby attached to you in the house, and people are like, oh, because this concept. And you know, sometimes midwives, we can be like we can be awful for it, because the advice that we give sometimes to women and to families is baby in a Moses basket, and we'd hammer home all this safe sleeping advice. Your baby, when they're not on you, when they're not feeding, they need to be in a Moses basket. So I think sometimes parents are just terrified
on the
because they think
in the
this baby needs to go down because my midwife said that if it's not okay, it's not feeding, it needs to go in the Moses basket. But actually being like, well, you know, it's more natural really, because we're a carrying species. Like really, we would carry our young, you know, and so actually I think that it'd be people, you know, whenever we say it to people and they've got a baby that is not settling as well, and then we might get a sling, and then they do, oh my gosh, the difference.
That moment, as soon as they've had that struggle with that baby and they get that sling and they put that baby, I have mums cry so many times. I had a few dads tear up as well, because they've been so stressed because they haven't been able to help. And then they can, and I'm like, right, well, that's your thing now. You wear the baby in the sling so she can have a rest. Like that's what you do. I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about different cultures and carrying, and how carrying is so prevalent in a lot of other cultures still to this day. A lot of people don't know that the UK had a carrying culture as well. The biggest remnants we have it is the Welsh shawl, which was more of a hip carry with a blanket wrapped around. So that was native to the UK as well. And there's evidence as well in Scotland of various clan tartans being used as a simple knot sling, which is very similar to the lasso in Kenya, where it's just a bit of fabric just tied on the shoulder, and then it's used as a hip carrier and as a feeding aid and everything like that. And there's evidence that also happened with clan tartan up in Scotland as well. And in the UK, in England, sorry, I just don't Wales, Scotland, that's all the UK. In England, we did as well, but with the Industrial Revolution, people aren't working in fields. With the advent of World War One, women going to work, formula being invented. I'm not anti-formula. Both my babies were formula babies, not my choice, but but that also led to this separation. It's only in the last 100 years that this concept of separation, like even 100 years ago, families were still all sleeping in one bedroom. They didn't have separate bedrooms. Yet now we're expecting these tiny little people, these little babies, to sleep in their own nursery all night long and not wake up.
It's very similar to what we find with the whole idea of home birth. It's lots of things compounded to make what was such a normal thing 60 years ago, that everyone was having the baby at home and we were carrying, to now that it's home birth and sling wearing at certain points was a bit like, oh god, you're out there. It's actually, no, this was just what we used to do all the time. This is normal, this is natural.
That's it. We lost it. We're bringing it back. We're bringing it back. So what would you say are some key values that dictate your care program? You've already talked about making it accessible and ensuring like it's one of you all the way through. Like, are there any other key components that you wanted to talk about?
I think really, and one of the reasons that we love the continuity in the caseload inside of it, is being able to empower women, and so that they can make informed choices about every aspect of the care. So we're absolutely massive on, here is all the evidence on your one issue or on anything that comes up in pregnancy. Now it's up to you guys to decide what you want to do, rather than me saying, oh well, this is what we should do. It's all in their hands, and they can come to us at any point and say, oh, can we ask a question about this? Can we have some more information on this? We didn't quite understand this. To make sure that through their pregnancy journey and through their birth, regardless of what mode of birth it is, they come out of it and feel that it was all in their control. They were empowered to make choices, and they just have that positive birth experience. Even if it didn't go to the original plan, they still come away from it and think, oh, actually, that was really good. I'm really happy with how that turned out, because I felt empowered and I felt informed through it.
And that's the thing, in terms of having, a positive birth experience, it's not so much, a lot of the time people think it's, for example, if people look at the fact that our home birth rates are so high, they might think that it's, it's just having a home birth and achieving that home birth. But actually, whether or not you have a vaginal birth, a cesarean section, it actually, on the basis of feeling like you had a positive birth experience, it's almost the type of birth actually doesn't come into it really, because what does come into it is whether you felt that your agency and autonomy was respected, whether you felt heard, you know,
supported,
and if you were supported, and whether you were the center of the decision making process. You know, we do a lot of work with people surrounding previous birth trauma, and so many, you know, the themes that consistently come up are the feelings of not being listened to, and actually feeling as though things were done to them rather than actually it was their choice.
Everything was taken out of their hands, and things were just happening, and they didn't know what was going on, didn't have time to ask what was going on, and then they were just handed a baby at the end of it, and they were like, oh, is this my baby, or what do we do now? Just that disconnect from the event and the ending of it.
And then also the feeling of them being almost told, well, you should just be grateful that you and your baby are alive, or that you've got a healthy baby, just be happy with that. And for so many people, it's like a guilt that they sit with internally, and they don't really ever speak about it, because it's like, actually, obviously I love my baby, I'm happy I've got my baby, but I'm also grieving for the fact that I've just been through a process that either wasn't what I wanted, or I didn't maybe feel safe in the process. So, you know, we have people who, for some people, their dream birth is they want a cesarean section, and it's about then trying to facilitate their choice within that. So is that skin in theatre? Is that having the drapes lowered so they can see the baby being born? You know,
can we do delayed cord clamping, the gentle sections, all these things that can get overlooked, but that makes the world of difference
to them. And they would sit and say, oh, I had the best birth experience. For other people, they don't want to be anywhere near a hospital, and they just want to be, you know, to them it's a birth in a place like in a you know, in the home setting, a birth pool, quiet lights, dim lights, and quiet environment. So really it's just about facilitating choice, and we're so passionate about that it's not about, you know, following guidelines, and sometimes people's care falls outside of what we would class to be your standard care, but to us it's you know,
if they've had the information on benefits and risks, and it's evidence-based information, not scare tactics, then if their choice falls outside of guidelines, just because it's not my choice or your choice or a doctor's choice, if it's their informed decision, then
we will
100%
support that, because actually in terms of making decisions about your birth and whether you accept or decline care, it's your human right to choose or decline care. And especially, you know, I think that so many people's rights are sometimes violated in the birth room, that we have to make sure that we're really protecting that space.
Considering when you compare it to other things, so cancer treatment, you could go down route A or route B, or you can go down route C, which is nothing, and if you choose nothing, your choice is respected because it's your life. But as soon as you put a baby in the mix, mum's choice seems to get pushed out the window, like, oh well, it doesn't really matter what you want because now
you've got a baby,
carrying a baby. But it doesn't work like that. It shouldn't work like that.
Oh, if only you were doing the NHS midwifery training, girls, honestly.
Well, we do train student midwives, don't we? We do, we do. And we do lecture at universities and things. So hopefully we get through. Banging the drum, we're getting through.
Bless you. Right, I'm just going to skip ahead with the questions now, too, just because it's relevant. So you mentioned there a bit about birth trauma and stuff, but I know that you both are trained in the rewind technique.
Yes.
So would you mind explaining a little bit about that and how it works for those people who may not know?
So the rewind technique is it's a process basically. So when you experience an event that you perceive to be threatening, or you perceive to be something that would trigger trauma, your body basically goes into like a fight or flight response, and it's a safety mechanism that we've developed as human beings to get us to a place of safety. But then sometimes what can happen is that trigger response can become linked to the memory. So that then whenever you recall that memory, you find yourself physiologically straight back in the same place. So, you know, the adrenaline rush that comes over you again. So the rewind technique is sort of, it's a process that we can guide people through. And it's like a talking approach basically, whereby it's a method to try and unlink the memory from that feeling.
The theory behind it is that when that memory is still kind of, if you imagine like in the midbrain and it's not been processed to your long-term memory, that's where when you think about it, it triggers that response in your body. So by working through the rewind, we can unlink those feelings and emotions from the memory, which means the memory can be processed, put back into your long-term memory, and when you recall it, it doesn't bring up this rush of emotion that you feel
where it
when
can
it first,
and it can be like overwhelming. for people. So we find that a previous difficult birth, and it's a lot. The thing is, the concept of trauma is so individual to each person. So for some people, what somebody would class to be traumatic is not what another person would. So and it can be used, we've used it not just with birth trauma. We've used it. You had a woman, didn't you, who'd had a really difficult breastfeeding experience with a previous child, and then she came to us, and you did Rewind to help her to process those feelings and have a successful breastfeeding journey this time.
It's one of the things that we're really passionate about in the antenatal period, because obviously we do a lot of physical prep and physical education on what your body's going to go through for birth. But then if you get to that point and you've got a mental block, whether that's your first time mum who's got an underlying fear of birth, or a second, third time mum with a previous traumatic experience, if mentally you've got that block, that will inhibit your labour. So we want our families to be physically healthy, prepared, but also emotionally and psychologically ready for the birth and feeling like they can face it, and not get to that point and think, oh God, I've got all these feelings I've not processed from last time, that now I'm here, all I can think about is that last time, and I can't relax into this birth.
And there's so much sort of there's research, there's anecdotal sort of experiences from many experienced midwives, and we found it ourselves, haven't we, where sort of, and this was before we sort of started doing the work that we do now, but sometimes in labour there can be a halt of labour, and there's not necessarily anything physical all the time, and sometimes it is an emotional block, because so much of labour is controlled, obviously it's controlled by your hormones, and if you're getting to a stage where you're feeling like there's something's coming up for you that's triggering that adrenaline response, your oxytocin, which is your labour hormone, will just start to fall, and labour will just stop. So if we can help to process those feelings, then obviously it's just really beneficial for families, really. And we do it with dads as well. I've done a rewind technique with partners. I'll rewind anyone in the family.
Oh, that's amazing. Is that quite standard then across other independent midwives as well, or is it?
No, I mean, we're both trained to be perinatal mental health specialists as well, so so we just integrate into part of our practice, don't we?
I would say some independent midwives
some do, I think.
But it's not, I wouldn't call it a standard.
No, and I don't think, because we sort of offer it to all of our families just as part of the care we do, we would do it at an antenatal appointment for people, so I don't know, I think people tend to do one-off sessions, don't they? Well, it's 3 sessions, but maybe a course of it, rather than integrating it into the care pathway.
Amazing. So at the moment you're doing, well, not at the moment, you always do, but currently you're doing a lot of work on equality in birth care and striving to address the fact that BAME birth parents are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than white birth parents. Can you tell us more about that?
So it was something that we were already looking at, because we're currently both doing our masters, and for our dissertation it was something that had really interested us, because there's not a lot of research going on into why, so we wanted to kind of start the ball rolling, because it's something we're really passionate about, and so we set up My Midwives Initiative to try and get a funding stream so that we could start to share the knowledge that we were learning and that we thought was kind of pertinent to starting to improve practice. And from that we've started doing lots of different workshops for universities, and then as part of our PMA role, the professional midwifery advocate, we do that at lots of different trusts, usually in person, pre-COVID times obviously, because it's quite a restorative approach to support and guide people through that. But it's working quite well on Zoom, isn't it, at the minute?
It's just, obviously there's a lot of difficult emotions that can come up for people when discussing, unconscious bias, and sometimes people sort of have to sit with themselves and think, sometimes I might have been complicit in these issues, and so we sort of take it from, obviously there's so much amazing work that's going on in general, but we're taking it from the point of a midwifery approach, so trying to support midwives to sort of how can we look at practice, and how can we create a culturally safe maternity space for people to access maternity care. So we sort of look at, you know, the experiences of Black and brown people accessing maternity care, and the research behind that, and just sort of practical implications as to like, what does it mean to be actively anti-racist? Because it's not just enough, like people say, you know, just to say, oh, I'm not racist, and we have to actively, you know, dismantle the systems that
like
are
decolonising your policies, anything that's quite like Eurocentric terms for describing wellness and things like that, things that people can go back into practice and start to action. You know, one of the key things we always use is when we describe a well baby, it's very common that you'll see in all the notes, warm, pink and alert, but how is your black baby pink? They're not, but midwives will just write it because you're so used to warm, pink and alert. But that in itself is just an unconscious process that you could go back and unpick in your unit by just changing to warm, well perfused and alert. You know, it's as simple as that sometimes.
So that's basically the work that we're doing. Obviously the research that we're doing, you know, behind it for our masters anyway, that continues to underpin it. And you know, we're very busy with it, aren't we? But no, it's such necessary work. And as we said, we do a lot of work with universities as well, because obviously student midwives and the midwives of the future. So at the point of registration, so many student midwives fed back to us that they didn't feel like it was really included in their training at all. You know, sort of even how to detect deterioration in black and brown skin. Like a lot of the textbooks are all, when they show rashes, when they show anything, it's all like on white skin tones. So, you know, even things as detecting jaundice in black babies, you know, midwives, we need to be able to offer care, safe care to people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And currently it is missing from midwifery education. It should be a continuous thread throughout education, you know, that it's, if we're talking about jaundice, it should be this is how it presents in a white baby, this is how it presents in a black baby.
And this is one of the big things that we're trying to do, because we want that kind of streamlined pathway of, it doesn't need us to come in and do a separate session. Whenever you're talking about, if you're talking about mastitis and you're talking about recognising it, using the term red for black skin is probably not going to be appropriate. So how do you tell a mum what she's looking out for mastitis? But that should be in your general lesson on potential breastfeeding issues, not a separate topic on, oh, well, we've done the whole curriculum, but here's our one session on recognising things in black and brown skin. And we really want that to be.
Yeah, we do.
Because there's a big overhaul in midwifery education at the minute. They're changing all the curriculum to meet new guidelines. So now is the time that we should be changing those lectures to include these things.
Because we don't want it to be a tick box exercise, like, oh, right, we've included diversity, everyone's had an hour out the whole 3 years that they're training. Oh, they've had their hour now on how to care for BAME people, and then it's that you know, it's the conversation around that. There's so much to it, so you know, there's a lot of work to be done, but we're trying to do our little bit, aren't we? And there's you know, there's so many amazing platforms that, you know, and there's so many amazing people out there. There's there's obviously the 5 More campaign, which is raising so much you know, so much awareness. Mars Lodge, you know, there's so many people out there that are doing the work. So we're just trying to do our little bit that we can do.
And you're doing loads. You're having a massive impact. So how long have you been doing that and teaching that? Has it been a few years, a year, a month?
So the masters, so the masters we've been doing for the last year, and part of that has been sort of woven through it, and the workshops have been in that time as well.
So we started from the beginning of the year, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. So how did the Black Lives Matter movement, obviously that came to a head this year with George Floyd's murder, how did that impact the message you're taking out and what you're teaching and what you're trying to impart to other midwives and trainee midwives?
I think what we found, because obviously it was something we were already doing and we were already really passionate about, but it really did help make other people more receptive to
the work,
what we were saying, and actually sitting down and doing the work, so the reflective work that we encourage people to do, and the message that we're trying to get across. People were more kind of willing to listen in a way, and wanting to take it on, and more kind of wanting to spread the word about it as well, that we need to raise awareness.
I think for a lot of people, and I suppose that's part of the issue of privilege, is that for a lot of people it's not an issue until it's drawn to their attention. So, and that's one of the, you know, the things of what it means to be privileged, is that you can sort of tune in and out of it as you want to, and out of the issues. But I think that the global platform that sort of ensued from that event meant that people were then having the conversations. People, like George said, they were more receptive to doing the work. And actually it takes commitment to continuously, you know, try and work on yourself, and it's a difficult process for people to go through. So I think that they were more willing and more, they understood why it was more necessary. I think people are still really, really shocked when they know how, you know, the statistics. And we were speaking to a colleague today, and we were discussing there's research that basically says that within the the Embrace report is produced by it's produced every annually, but it looks at the last 3 years of statistics for maternal mortality. But the authors of the Embrace have gone on to do further research where they looked at the ethnicity of the women and sort of looked at what their outcomes would be in their own country. And they found that for women of the Pakistani origin, they would be safer to give birth in Pakistan than they would be in this country. That the mortality rates are worse for Pakistani women and Southeast Asian women
in the UK
South Asian women,
if they were being cared for
in the road. And so it tells us that there's something that we're doing that is systematically, you know, the levels of disparities are coming from our maternity system and the failings that we're sort of creating for people, because so much of the time we just think, oh, you know, we have this view that we're the West and our maternity system is far more advanced, and actually, you know, if you're Black and brown in this country, you're not as safe to negotiate through the maternity system. And that currently is just a really stark fact, that it's not, that maternity in this country is not as safe for Black and brown people as it is for white people. And so we just can't, you know, we do need to, we have to unpick it. There's no, unfortunately, there's no other choice.
Well, no, women are dying.
People are dying.
It's that simple. And it's horrendous. It's awful. And thank goodness for people like you guys who are trying to have an impact. You're knocking there, and you are not trying, you are having an impact, but more needs to be done. But that's why I wanted to talk to you about it on here as well. Like, yes, this is a baby podcast, but before you can wear a baby, you've got to have one.
You have to have your baby. And you know, and infants of Black mothers are twice as likely, you know, black babies are twice as likely to be stillborn. They're more likely to be born prematurely. So it really does affect the whole family continuum, really.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned that you've got perinatal mental health training. How much do you believe carrying can support a parent's mental health in those early those first few months, especially?
Massively, really. Going in back to what we talked about, the cortisol levels and the crying babies, that level of stress that you feel when you put your baby down and the screaming, that in itself is a massive stressor. So baby wearing and having an overall calmer baby and all that skin to skin, all the oxytocin helps. The breastfeeding, obviously we know, and lots of research on when mums are struggling with breastfeeding, and there's increased risks of postnatal depression. Baby wearing can help with breastfeeding. It can help with the position and keeping them close. So we're definitely big advocates of it for lots of reasons, but especially mental health.
And have you noticed anything about how it can help babies thrive? So say you've got, you know, a baby's come out maybe a bit too early, or there's been some issues during birth where baby is stalled a bit in their development. Have you seen anything about how slings and carriers can help babies to flourish in that way?
Well, we know that it helps. Obviously, we talk about the first 1001 days, don't we, and the development that's so important during that time. And obviously, from that point, they can... every experience they have, every early childhood experience is sort of going towards their experience of the world and how they view the world, and that completely sort of affects their cognitive development. And we know that babies, for example, that might be born prematurely, they can sometimes sort of, their early experiences could lead to an insecure attachment. So actually, the more that we can then sort of help to support that and have that early bonding, and we know that the close
like Kangaroo Care, obviously a little bit different than your sling carrying, but that baby wearing of having them on your skin. Loads of research on that, isn't there now, for Kangaroo Care.
And you know, it helps to regulate their respiration rates, the temperature, the heart rate. You know, the temperature is amazing. It tends to, you know, we know that it calms them in general. So if they've had quite a stressful birth or a difficult entrance into the world, we know that helps just to bring their heart rate sort of down, the cortisol levels down, and sort of just helps them to make that transition.
One of the things we love is that people tend to think that's initial skin to skin. That's it, you don't need to do skin to skin again. But what we love is, well, you're in the house, especially now in lockdown, get your top off, get your baby in the nappy and get them on your skin. And yeah, okay, you don't want to be stuck on the sofa, so put them in a sling
and then you
on your skin to skin. You get all these gorgeous benefits. Your baby's calmer, you're calmer. If you're breastfeeding, then your milk production hormones are higher, and you can still, if you've got toddlers, you can still crack on with them because you've got both your hands free and your baby's lovely and settled on your chest. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's no brainer.
Oh, bless you. Yeah. No, it is. That's exactly what I say to all my new parents as well. Exactly the same. They're always surprised when I say to them, oh yeah, and the stretchy is great because if you spread it out, then you can just have your bra underneath, have baby in a nappy, and if the postman knocks, doesn't matter, you're pretty much covered. Although he'll have had a boobful before anyway, so.
Yeah.
Georgia, you mentioned Kangaroo Care just now. Would you mind explaining just a bit more about it? Because I know people have heard the term, and if you just explain a bit more about what Kangaroo Care is and how it helps babies and things, that'd be lovely.
Yeah. So in general, Kangaroo Care is something that we find more with our preterm infants, especially our babies who are on the neonatal unit. And it's where they have time out of the incubators on mum's skin. Usually they're obviously in the little nappies, and it's just helping to start build those initial bonds between mum and baby, because obviously it's a key area where, as Sheridan was saying, we are missing out on those initial early interactions with them being either so small or delicate to touch. But this method, there's lots of research that shows it's helping their brain development, it's helping the neural pathways, it's regulating the breathing. I think it was Australia did a lot of big studies on it, where the babies who had Kangaroo Care were recovering quicker than babies who didn't. Because at the end of the day, we're all human, we all need that skin-to-skin contact, we need that touch. And by lots of the neonatal units now supporting it and just supporting the logistics really of bringing that little tiny baby out of their incubator and putting it on mum or dad's chest and having that help as part of their kind of treatment course in a way.
That's
awesome. So what you've already talked a little bit about this, but what is your top tip for carrying for parents and caregivers?
Mine, I think, would be do it when they're settled. So if you're feeding, watch where you're feeding, have a good feed, and then put them in it. And I would say do it in skin to skin first, because the last thing you want is them already. They've already started kicking off. They're already unhappy. You've never used a sling before. You can't get that leg in, and you just call it a day because it's just your stress levels are through the roof. No one's around to help you. Get them settled. Get them sleepy. Put them in it. Just so much easier.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. And Sheridan?
I think mine would just be that I have to just tell people to baby wear all the time. Just have your baby. Honestly, I just do it every day. I just think while you're in the house, like I said, I think that the biggest misconception is this idea of sort of just having them carrying them outside of the house. But I think the best time is to carry them in the house. I think it's a great facilitator for feeding because they're close to where they can smell the milk, and those early sort of scents can just really help with latch and things like that. So mine, I'd say it would just be wear them every day in the house. Keep them on you, attached to you. It just helps with that 4th trimester. It's just so important for like the transition. Definitely.
And it can be quite a healing experience if you have had a birth which wasn't what you intended, or you've come away from that birth feeling quite upset with a sense of loss. That close comfort and bond and just attachment with your baby and wearing them can be a really, really nice way to go through that 4th trimester, and quite healing, and like mental health benefits. But even just a smaller thinking, looking down at the little face, can smell the head. Everyone knows that all those lovely scents they release from the head. It's just all the time. Get a sling, put them on it.
That's basically stay there.
It's funny you say that it is healing, because neither of my births were what I wanted, and neither of my breastfeeding journeys were what I wanted. But I carry them. That's the thing that I can do, is I can carry them, and I still carry them. Dexter's just started reception, but like he was knackered when I picked him up today. But I always take a sling with me, and he just said, "Mum, can I get on your back?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." He climbed on, sling on. We walked home, and he was chatting away, just out. And I'm just like, I can still do. Couldn't have the births or the feeding I wanted, but I could carry them. So it did, and it healed. It didn't heal all of the wounds, but it healed a lot of that pain and heartache that I carry still for not having what I wanted there. But I can carry them. Everyone can carry them, but oh, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast, guys.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Where can people find you if they want to follow up?
So we're on Instagram and Facebook. We are at My Midwives UK, or people can always drop us an email on info@mymidwives.co.uk.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much.
Oh, thank you for having us.
You've been listening to the MotherRucker Podcast with me, Lizanne Skinner. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok at MotherRucker UK and on YouTube. If you have a question you'd like me to answer on the podcast, please send an email to podcast@motherrucker.co.uk. If you need help with carrying, I'm available for online and in-person consultations 5 days a week. Please go to www.motherrucker.co.uk for more information. Remember to like, share, subscribe, text your mate, post it on social media, whatever. Just get the word out there. Once again, ladies, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, no, loved it.
I'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.